The flames danced with a terrible beauty, consuming the Sodder family home. It was Christmas Eve, 1945. George Sodder, the patriarch, watched in horror as his house turned into an inferno. He had managed to escape, along with his wife Jenny and 4 of their 9 children. But 5 children remained trapped inside. The fire had spread with terrifying speed. Frantic, George tried everything to rescue his children. He climbed a ladder to reach the 2nd floor, but it gave way, sending him crashing to the ground. He scrambled for another ladder, but it was gone. Desperate, he tried to start his trucks, hoping to use one to climb to the 2nd floor window. But the engines, which had worked perfectly the day before, were inexplicably dead. As the fire raged, neighbors rushed to help, but their efforts were in vain. The local fire department, a skeleton crew due to the holiday, arrived with agonizing slowness. By the time they arrived, the house was a smoldering ruin. The 5 missing children, Maurice, Martha Lee, Louis, Jenny Irene, and Betty Dolly, were nowhere to be found. The story of the Sodder children is not just a tale of a house fire. George Sodder, originally Giorgio Sodu, had emigrated from Italy to the United States in 1895. He settled in Fayetteville, West Virginia, a town with a significant Italian immigrant population. Hardworking and ambitious, George built a successful trucking business. He married Jenny Cipriani, also an Italian immigrant, and together they built a life filled with the love of their 9 children. But George's outspoken nature and his open criticism of Benito Mussolini created friction within the community. Fayetteville had its share of Mussolini sympathizers. Whispers followed George, accusing him of being a communist, an anarchist, a troublemaker. Some went further, issuing veiled threats, suggesting that his outspokenness could have dire consequences. As the year 1945 dwindled down to its final days, a sense of unease settled over the Sodder household. Strangers seemed to lurk around the property, their gazes lingering on the children. One of the older Sodder boys reported seeing a strange car parked near the schoolhouse. Inside, 2 men sat watching the younger children play. When confronted, the men sped off, leaving a cloud of dust and a sense of foreboding in their wake. Then came the threats, more direct and chilling than the whispers. An insurance salesman, a man George had argued with about Mussolini, stopped by the house. He warned George that his house would go up in smoke and his children would pay the price for his anti-Mussolini views. George, though shaken, tried to dismiss the threats as the ravings of a disgruntled man. Another warning came from a more unexpected source. A man who had recently done some electrical work on the Sodder home pulled George aside. He told George that the wiring in the house was faulty, a fire hazard waiting to happen. Christmas Eve arrived, a night typically filled with joy and anticipation. But for the Sodder family, the festive air was thick with an unspoken tension. Despite their anxieties, the family tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. The younger children excitedly trimmed the Christmas tree, their laughter a brief respite from the worry that clouded the house. Presents were laid out, and the smell of Jenny's cooking filled the air. That evening, as the children were preparing for bed, the phone rang. Jenny answered, her hand trembling slightly. A woman's voice, unfamiliar and cold, asked for someone by name. The name meant nothing to Jenny. As she tried to explain that the caller had the wrong number, she heard laughter in the background. Then came the clinking of glasses as if a toast were being made. And then, silence. The line went dead. The fire started sometime after midnight. Jenny, awakened by a strange noise, smelled smoke. She raced downstairs to find the house already engulfed in flames. The fire seemed to be concentrated around the fuse box, the very spot the electrician had warned George about. The fire burned for hours, fueled by the dry wood of the house and the helplessness of the Sodder family. By the time the fire trucks finally arrived, the house had been reduced to a smoldering skeleton. The official investigation was perfunctory at best. The fire marshal, citing the faulty wiring that George had supposedly ignored, quickly ruled the fire an accident. The 5 missing children, the authorities concluded, had perished in the blaze. But for George and Jenny Sodder, the official explanation rang hollow. Too many things didn't add up. The fire had burned too quickly, too intensely, for the children to have escaped. Yet no trace of their remains was ever found. The missing ladder, the cut phone line, the malfunctioning trucks, the strange car, and the threats, these were not the random occurrences of a tragic accident. The fire that consumed the Sodder home had also consumed their lives. George, once a successful businessman, devoted his remaining years to uncovering the truth about his missing children. He hired private investigators, chased down every lead, every rumor. He placed advertisements in newspapers across the country, offering a reward for any information about his children. He even traveled to different states, following up on reported sightings. In 1949, 4 years after the fire, a glimmer of hope emerged from the ashes. A tip led George to a field where a human skull was said to have been found. The skull turned out to be a dead end, but the search unearthed something else. A collection of small, charred objects that resembled human bones. Hope surged through George. Could these be the remains of his children? He sent the fragments to the FBI for analysis. The results, however, dealt George another crushing blow. The FBI concluded that the bones did not belong to the missing Sodder children. George Sodder died in 1969, his heart broken, his quest for answers unfulfilled. Jenny, her hair turned white with grief, never stopped mourning her lost children. She continued to wear black every day, a symbol of her unending sorrow, until her own death in 1989. The billboard, a beacon of hope and despair, was finally taken down after Jenny's passing. But the story of the missing Sodder children refused to die. The mystery lived on, passed down through generations, whispered in hushed tones in the hills of West Virginia. The case became a staple of true crime documentaries and podcasts, each retelling adding to the legend. Over the years, numerous theories have been proposed, each more outlandish than the last. Some believe that the children were kidnapped by a satanic cult, others by the mafia. Still others believe that the children ran away to start new lives. The truth, however, remains elusive. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more intriguing mysteries.